So a lot of addiction problems in our society these days. So you have a major in addiction science that, you know what, it is such a blessing that you have studied this major. Today, tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow, I'm going to talk about addiction, also mental illness, such as depression, bipolar. So a lot of people have these mental issues these days. Then how can we overcome them? So over the next 3 days, I'm going to talk about this. Maybe you will hear something that you have not heard yet at school. A lot of addictions, right? Game addictions, gambling, drugs, even addicted with the money. Also, sex addiction, a lot of addictions. So as we take the subway these days, a lot of people are addicted with their cell phones. So it looks like this in the subway. Everyone is looking at their cell phones. So even the newspaper is talking about this issue. Stocks, investment are addictions as well, legal. WHO, World Health Organization, they officially say game addiction as an official disease. In the past, very few who do drugs, right? But these days, many people are exposed to it. So there are many kinds of addictions, but there's no clear way to heal these patients. So we do have students who are studying science addictions here. How many people have you seen who are free from addictions? Maybe few, right? Hardly. But today, I'm going to share a secret. Because in this place, many people get free from addictions. So more and more people are addicted. A lot of young people are addicted with the drugs. One of the richest people in Korea, so CEO of Samsung, his name is Lee Jae-yong, and he also is addicted. So addiction is everywhere. Then why do drugs? Why are we addicted with something? So when you hike, have you ever climbing on a rock or a mountain? Why do people like this kind of a sport? Even these days, without having a rope, it is called a free solo. They climb a mountain. If they make a mistake, they would die at once. Why do they do that? As they do this, the brain feels pleasures. When we work hard, if we study so hard, and we would accomplish something, then we would feel accomplishment feelings and pleasures. They are in the brain. But we don't want to work hard, but we just need the pleasures. That's our human's tendency.
An example that clearly demonstrates that pleasure is a function of the brain is the fact that pleasure can be induced by drugs. Pleasure, enjoyment, and happiness in nature and social life are usually achieved through extensive practice and experiences of success and failure. In other words, they are the result of hard work. However, people have discovered herbs that allow them to obtain happiness, pleasure, instantly and effortlessly.
그래서 인간은
So people, we want pleasures.
그래서 우리 뇌 속에는 이 쾌감을
So there is some part of the brain which feels a pleasure.
근데 그 뇌 영역 이 쾌감을 느끼게 하는 것을
Because we want to feel this feeling, happiness feeling. That's why we do drugs, gambling.
것들을 하는 거예요. 그래서
So there was an experiment using mice.
과연 이게
So we wanted to know. So let's take a look.
In 1954, neuroscientists James Olds and Peter Miller conducted an experiment using mice. In this experiment, researchers planted electrodes deep in the area right next to the left nucleus of the brain. In addition, a lever was installed to apply weak electricity near the left and right nuclei through the electrode when the mouse presses the lever. When the mouse presses the lever, electric stimulation is given to the left and right nuclei, and the mouse feels pleasant. The mouse starts pressing the lever repeatedly to receive the stimulus. Then it stops eating, drinking, and breathing. One mouse pressed the lever more than 7,500 times in 12 hours. A few days after the experiment began, most mice died of dehydration. This is because they were addicted to pleasure and lost the will to perform other activities besides electrical stimulation. This experiment was highly significant to the researchers at the time. I learned that there is an area in the brain that is responsible for pleasure, and when this area is overused, everything else is set aside in their daily lives in order to be focused only on pleasure, confirming that a big problem results. Several experiments have since shown that a neurotransmitter called dopamine is associated with signaling in these brain regions, and it has also been observed that mice stop pressing the lever when dopamine antagonists are administered.
Although this experiment was with the mice, even mice wanted pleasure. Instead of, playing, instead of eating, they want pleasure.
캐나다의 맥길 대학에서
The same experiment
봤는데
was in Canada.
이 쥐에게
So if this mouse looks a hole and then it feels pleasure, and he keeps pressing the lever for happiness feelings.
그래서 그 뇌에
So there's a part in the brain which feels this pleasure, happiness.
일을 하는데 마약을 먹을 때 쾌감
So the same part of the brain when we drugs
게임을 할
and then when we play games, computer games,
것을 알게
and then the same part of the brain is activated. Left side, the blue part, and the yellow part, the same, almost the same part. This is a part which feels happiness.
우리 중독에는 두 가지가 크게
There are two kinds of
되는데
addictions.
어떤 행위로
So we would be addicted by actions.
게임을 했는데 아무것도
So we play games,
주사하거나
but we don't
하게 되는 거예요.
get any substance, but we are still, we are addicted.
마약이라든지
But the other addiction,
또는 다른
by substance, such as drugs, or by eating, or by something else we intake.
그래서 이것을
So there are two kinds of addictions, behavior addiction and substance addiction.
얼마 전에는
Not too long ago,
형제
the king of golf,
그가
he's a famous golfer.
중독으로
He was hospitalized
그래서 타이거 우드는
because of sex addiction. He is addicted. Tiger Woods.
기사에서는 그가 1등을
Because he had like OCD, he had a lot of stress that he must be number one in golf.
그런 중독
But because of this, addiction, he wanted to release this stress, he said.
마약 중독
So there's a drugs rehab,
중독 병원에
like a drugs rehab. Those who are addicted with the drugs,
이제
so they are interviewed.
왜
Why? What happened? And then you are addicted. So this is their answers.
The patients are cutting off the cycle of addiction through the various programs here. These people have been addicted for a very long time. Why did they fall into addiction in the first place? What is the reason you cannot cut off the thoughts of the drug? It's because of the pleasure, of course. That feeling is unforgettable. It's that very first high. I'm constantly trying to find it again. So I gradually increase how much I take. That first feeling of when I first took it, I can't forget that. The thought that bothers them constantly is the memory of pleasure from taking the drug.
우리 뇌는 그
So our brain remembers this pleasure. And we want to have it again and again. That's how this drug addicted take the drugs. And then more and more.
이제 성경을 배우고 있는
So those who attend the church, and then maybe those who believe in God, maybe there are a lot of people in this place. So when Eve committed a sin for the first time, she ate the forbidden fruit.
그 선악과를
When she saw it, it didn't look like that before, but there was a Satan, and the Satan
금직하고
made Eve feel that the forbidden fruit looks so good, desirable, and then this desire went into Eve's heart, and then she ended up eating it.
똑같이
The same thing. So these feelings, emotions come to us. Because of this, we would be addicted. Because of this feeling, like drug addiction or drinking or smoking, we would fall into these addictions.
우리들의
So we must be careful with the senses.
All should guard the senses, lest Satan gain victory over them, for these are the avenues to the soul.
이 중독을 해결하기 위해서
In order to solve this addiction problem,
브루스 알렉
psychologist, his name is Bruce Alexander, he had experiments with mice. This experiment is a very famous one.
그런데
He made a rat park.
쥐공원에 아주 열악한
So, but the
쥐공원,
park was really poor.
그리고 한쪽에는 이 열악한
And so this
쥐공원
rat park, this is scene, poor environment.
그리고 그
So in this rat park,
이 마약
so there's a distilled water,
서로 이걸
but in the water there's a drugs. So this,
그랬더니
so these rats become obsessed with the water containing drugs.
쥐들이 그
So
마약
these rats are obsessed with this,
그래서 이 쥐들은
drugs.
같이
and later
행복한
these rats
먹을 것도 많고
had a wonderful park.
놀이하기도 좋고
A lot of friends, a lot of toys, a wonderful park.
그랬더니
When these mice went there, guess what? They stopped drinking water with the drugs. They only drank just pure water.
이 글로 발표했는데
So let's
한번 우리가
take a look.
So he created something called a rat park. It consisted of a large cage covered with soft sawdust, bright lighting, warm temperatures, play tunnels, and toy balls. The walls of the cage were covered with green wallpaper painted with forest scenes so that the researchers could not be seen. He then released a large number of rats into the cage and allowed them to interact freely and mate. They provided the mice with a mixture of morphine and water and installed sensors on the dispensers to record the amount of liquid each mouse consumed. The results showed that the mice did not drink the morphine.
So they stopped drinking drugs.
환경이
The good environment helps these mice to stop drinking drugs. So he,
반대론자들이
he's
그거는
shared about this result.
그게 안 됐기
And the people said, well, they were not addicted, but the mice, which are already addicted, they cannot stop drinking, drugs. So he wanted to have, experiments more. For the next 57 days, these mice became addicted, and then they were transferred to the rat park.
They found a statistically significant difference. The rats in the park consumed less morphine than those in the cages. Critics argued that the rats were not addicted to morphine and that even if they were, changing their environment would not help because addiction is a pathological condition that cannot be overcome by environmental factors alone. Undeterred, Alexander went a step further. He forced mice to consume a morphine solution for 57 days to induce addiction, then released them into the mouse park. When he offered them a choice between the morphine solution and plain water upon arrival, the mice stopped taking morphine.
자, 그러면
So as we see this kind of, experiment,
중독과
addiction, how to quit this addiction, what is the relationship? The environment, relationship. So these are the factors which changes addiction. If we do not know about this, we just put these addicted people in the rehab, and then there's nothing, and then they still have addiction problem.
중독 끊지 않는다고
We just scold them and criticize them because they are still addicted, but there's no solution.
쉬로 그러면
Of course, it was an experiment with the mice, but what about with the humans?
그런데
But actually, it was an experiment, which is not an experiment.
분들이
When the American soldiers went into Vietnam for the Vietnam War, many soldiers were, killed. So just, friends, other soldiers were killed by poisons. So by, poisonous arrows, killed so many soldiers.
어떨 때는
And sometimes, like a, sword or knife,
와서
and the people were killed.
옆에서 죽는 모습
When they saw their, fellow soldiers who were killed, they had a hard time, and then they had a traumatic experience. They had to take morphine drugs.
마약
What about these addicted American soldiers were able to quit, drugs?
베트남에 갔었던 군인들
So soldiers who went into Vietnam.
그래서 이 TED
So
테드라고 하는
so there is a famous
요한 할이라고 하는
program like a TED, TED, and John Harry talked about it.
The Vietnam War. In Vietnam, 20% of all American troops were using loads of heroin. And if you look at the news reports from the time, they were really worried because they thought, my God, we're going to have hundreds of thousands of junkies on the streets of the United States when the war ends. It made total sense. Now, those soldiers who were using loads of heroin were followed home. The Archives of General Psychiatry did a really detailed study, and what happened to them? It turns out they didn't go to rehab. They didn't go into withdrawal. 95% of them just stopped. Now, if you believe the story about chemical hooks, that makes absolutely no sense. But Professor Alexander began to think there might be a different story about addiction. He said, what if addiction isn't about your chemical hooks? What if addiction is about your cage? What if addiction is an adaptation to your environment? Looking at this, there was another professor called Peter Cohen in the Netherlands who said, maybe we shouldn't even call it addiction. Maybe we should call it bonding. Human beings have a natural and innate need to bond. And when we're happy and healthy, we'll bond and connect with each other. But if you can't do that because you're traumatized or isolated or beaten down by life, you will bond with something that will give you some sense of relief. Now, that might be gambling, that might be pornography, that might be cocaine, that might be cannabis, but you will bond and connect with something because that's our nature. That's what we want as human beings.
쥐보다 사람을 가지고
This is a result of human beings, right? So Vietnam War
아주 우리들에게 좋은
was a good example.
모범이에요. 그래서 그들은
So when these soldiers came back, 95% of the soldiers just quit naturally.
이 사회의
What about right now? You know, there's so many addictions in society. How do we solve them? You have an answer by now. Bonding with the humans. Relationship with each other.
그래서 이
So this is what he said.
Lecturer Johan Hari said that the opposite of addiction is not a clear mind, but relationships. Although the world is closely connected through the internet and Wi-Fi, he argues that isolation is actually increasing. He said that interactions on social media, such as Facebook, are merely imitations of human relationships.
그런 일반적인
Instead of just a general relationship, but the intimate relationship, genuine relationship with the family members. So we need this kind of a relationship.
근데 이 관계가
But what if we have a sour, bad relationship? We do have problems.
저도 우리 집사람하고
In the past, you know, I fought a lot with my wife.
근데 싸우면
When I fought, you know, with my wife,
가지고
a thought came to me. Well,
옛날에는
because I did not know about Jesus, you know, I could drink, right? But now, no friends, you know, no drinking.
뭔가
And I wanted to do something, but nothing.
그래서 사랑과
So relationship with each other is important.
우리는 어디서
Where can I get this good relationship? The world is in chaos.
모든 사람들은 나의 진실한 그런
So we do not have genuine friends. We are isolated. But the one way is open. We need to look up. We can find hope over there.
여기에 이 오랫동안 그분이 그 술을 파는
So this person used to sell, you know, liquor,
근데 이분이
alcohol. But this person could not do anything. So he came to this place, but he did not believe in Jesus.
여기 오셔서
And he found out the way. So let's listen to his story, her story.
The reason I came to be here is because of my depression and panic disorder. In the case of the panic disorder, I got bitten by a large dog. As a result of the traumatic stress, I developed it. I also developed a social phobia, which often follows panic disorder. I also had anorexia, and I couldn't even eat one spoonful of food. At that point, my state was like a balloon, you know? When you blow into it to the point where it will pop.
많이 불면 이제 더 이상 불 수가 없으면 터지는 일뿐이 없잖아요.
I got into the point where if even just one person bothered me, I would burst.
건들기만 해라 나 폭발한다.
So I said, just try bothering me. Everything felt like a challenge to me, and every word that left my mouth was negative. Mrs. Kim always mentioned in her lectures continually
이런 얘기를 듣다가 보니까
that she calls on Jesus. So I decided to give it a try too, like a test run.
이제 한번 했어요. 어머, 그랬더니
And as I
어느
did
날
that,
마음이
one day my
너무
heart felt
편안한
so
거예요.
at peace.
그리고서는
And after a week had
일주일
passed,
조금 지났는데 그때는 찬미가
I'd cry when I sang a praise song, and I'd cry when I prayed. The tears just kept coming like that.
흘렸던 거예요. 그리고 그냥
I just felt so touched in my heart.
쿵쿵
And then
하면서
before I knew it,
화가 안
I stopped
나요.
feeling angry, no matter what
무엇이든지.
happened.
그랬더니
From then on, I started
밥도
sleeping
잘
well
먹고
and
잠도
eating
잘
well.
자고 그러면서
And so I
제가
established my
제
own
나름대로
rule.
제가 철칙을 세운 게 있어요. 이제
There were
저한테
3
있어서
things that I
버려야 될
needed
것
to
3
give up.
가지가 있고 제가 진짜 끝까지
And I established 3 things that I
제가
should keep
지켜야 될 것 3
forever.
가지를 제가 정리를 했거든요. 이제
I am
거만하고
arrogant,
교만하고
proud, and conceited.
오만하고
These were 3
가지는
things
제가
that I needed to give
버려야
up.
돼요. 그리고
And the
제가
3
지켜야
things
될
I
것
needed
3
to
가지는
keep were
무조건
first, that I would obey,
앞에 무조건
and second, that I would submit to God no matter the circumstance, and third, to be like a sunflower,
그냥
to
바라기로
look
살기로
and live.
마음을
This is what I've decided. Thank you.
감사합니다.
저분은
And she looked to God and she quit drinking.
여러분 예수
I'm not saying that you need to believe in Jesus. No. Just say no. Stop drinking or stop playing games. So nothing to lose. Just call upon Jesus.
되면
If it works, then you can choose to believe in God or not. But first of all, you need to free from addictions. Do you know who that is? Steve Jobs.
스티브 잡스.
He's the one who invented the smartphone.
근데 이 사람이 자기 자녀들에게는
But he did not allow his children to use those gadgets. You know why?
우리 뇌는 이
Our brain has a frontal lobes or occipital lobes or side.
부정이
So there are some parts of the brains.
근데 게임을 하면
When we play games, computer games,
즉흥적으로 해야 되기
so
때문에
we need to be so fast.
운동신경 이 후두엽
So the
발달을 해.
back of the brain, would be very activated, but the like judgments or make right decisions are all done in the frontal lobe. If we play computer games a lot, so the back part of the brain would be so activated, but the frontal lobe is going to be dead.
이 우리 한
So let's take a look.
Then what about Steve Jobs? I'm curious. Steve Jobs had an interview with a reporter after launching the iPad. At the end of the interview, the reporter said this to him: "Your kids must love the iPad." And Steve Jobs says, "Well, I don't know, because they've never used it yet." Steve's own children had never used the iPad? How come? Steve Jobs himself was the one who invented the digital devices. He's the one who began the era of the smartphones. But he strictly limited them to his own children. Why did Steve Jobs limit this digital device to his own children, which brought him tremendous amount of wealth? There must have been a reason. Probably there was a scientific reason. This is an image of an average normal child's brainwave. The top is the nose. So to explain briefly, the closer the image is to red, the more that part of the brain is active. And if the color is darker in purple, it means that part of the brain is less active. So in general, it's best for the color to show green or something brighter. As you can see here, there are many areas that are generally green, and the left and right hemispheres are equally used, and the occipital lobe is being used slightly more. This is the normal brainwave in ordinary children. But what about the brain of a child who's addicted to smartphones? It's different, vastly different. Let's see. If the frontal lobe is purple, then it means that it's really not being used.
일반적으로 전체적으로
The
색깔이
colors
고르지
are
못하죠.
generally uneven. The upper part is the frontal lobe,
여러분이 보시는 화면에서 전두엽과 오른쪽 측두엽의 앞쪽 요 기능이 떨어졌다는
and you can
거를
see
우리가
that it's
금방
not
알 수가
functioning
있죠.
well.
예. 좌뇌의
Only the
후두엽만
occipital lobe is being highly
알수
active.
있어요.
What's the occipital part
우리 뇌
about? The
후두엽은요,
occipital lobe of our brain is where
자극을
it
받아들이고
receives and
처리하는
processes
일을 하는
visual
곳이에요.
stimuli.
그러니
So the more you are
스마트폰에
addicted to
중독이 될수록 뇌의
smartphones,
다른 영역을 쓰는 것은 저하되면서 시각적
only the part that
자극을
processes
처리하는
visual stimuli
활성화되고
becomes
있다는 것이
activated,
이
and the
뇌파
rest
검사
becomes turned
결과에서
down.
보여주는 거죠.
우리
If we really want the right bright future for our children, they must have a good frontal lobe and they must choose the right thing.
그래야 되는데
But the frontal lobe is not being used.
여기에는 이제 우리 부모
When we have like a parents and children's program, a lot of students come to this place.
이제 이런 우리 참가자들이
And usually we do have health guests.
한 고등학생
So a high school student came to Seronam.
대학을
She's about to take a SAT to go to university, but because she was addicted with the games and then she could not study, so her mom brought her, and then she was told, "You just stay a week." And she said, "What should I do here?" But she was told, "You just need to stay a week, okay?" While she is here, she began to meet God. As she began to meet God, this is how she explained. This is her testimony.
안녕하세요.
Hello,
저는
my
이제
name is
고등학교
Yang
3학년이
Ye-won, and I am a senior in high
양예원입니다.
school.
저는 중학교
I was
3학년
first
때
introduced to
처음으로
games by a friend
친구의
in middle
권유로
school.
게임을 시작하게 되었는데 게임을
I developed a
하루하루
habit
하다
of
보니까
playing games, so even when
나중에는
all my
친구들은
friends
모두
quit,
다
I kept
그만뒀는데 저
playing.
혼자만 열심히 게임을 하고 있었어요.
I'd play
낮에는
computer
컴퓨터
games
게임을
during
하고
the
저녁에는
day and be on my
핸드폰을
phone
하면서
at
하루
night.
종일
So it was as if I was being
사단에게
dragged around by
매일매일
Satan all
질질
day.
끌려다녔습니다. 제가
Because I lived so
하루
tied
종일
down to my computer and
그런
phone,
컴퓨터와 핸드폰에 매여서 살다 보니까 밤에
my sleeping
자게
time
되는
grew
시간이
shorter
늦어지고
and I couldn't concentrate well at
가면
school.
항상 피곤한 채로 수업도 잘 듣지 못하고 학원에
I couldn't
가도
focus during
수업을
cram
잘 듣지
school,
못하고
and I'd get
교실에 가도
distracted when I was
집중하지
in a
못해서
study room. So
제
my
학업
academic
스트레스는
stress
점점
kept
더
growing.
심해졌습니다. 제가 공부를
Even
하지
though it was
않아서
because I didn't
성적이
study
잘
well,
나오지
I
않았음에도
received a lot of
저는 그것으로
stress.
스트레스를 받고 그리고
And so I
그것도
tried de-stressing on my phone.
스트레스를
My
풀게
bad
되고
habit
그러면서
continued
계속해서
growing in
악순환이
this
계속되게
cycle.
됐습니다.
I
그러던
called my mom
도중에
and told her that
엄마에게
it was too
전화를
difficult to go to cram school.
학원 가는 게 너무 힘들어서 엄마에게 전화를 하게 됐는데 엄마가
My mom
일주일만
suggested we go
강하게
somewhere
어디 좀
for a
갔다
week,
오자
and it was
하는
at that time that I
말을
came
듣게
to
되고
Seronam.
알겠다고 해서 쉼터에 처음으로 오게 됐습니다. 내가
When I
처음에
first came to
쉼터에 왔을
Seronam,
때는
I had no intention to stop using my phone or playing games.
마음이 전혀 없었습니다.
I didn't want to give
제
up
긴
something
인생
so
중에서
fun
제가 이것을
when I have
이렇게
such a
재미있는
long
것을
life
벌써
ahead.
끝내고 싶지가 않았습니다. 그래서
That made it even harder to
결심을
decide
하는
to
것이
quit.
더 어려웠었습니다. 제가
Each day I spent here, I
여기
came to
와서 하루하루
realize that
있는
I can
동안
still be happy without my
핸드폰
phone.
없이도 제가 행복할 수 있다는 걸 알게 되고
For the
하늘나라에
first time, I
간다면
realized that if I go to heaven,
게임과
I will
TV
still be happy
없이도
without my phone,
이렇게
games, or
행복하게 계속
TV.
살 수 있겠구나 라는 것을 처음으로 느껴보게 됐습니다.
이 아이가 게임을 끊게 된 것은
The reason
분위기
how she quit these games because of the environment. And she quit
돌아갔어요.
games and she went home. And then later she came back. Do you think she was completely free from addiction or did she go back Don't you want to know? You want to know, right?
궁금하죠?
Should I just
네.
so let's continue to listen.
그래서 제가
I
이제
decided
게임을
to quit
끊기로
playing
결심을
games and
하고
returned home.
집에 돌아갔는데 한
One of my
친구가
friends
제게
asked me for my
너
account
게임
since she knew
끊는다고
I
했으니까
decided to
그
quit.
계정 나 좀 주면 안 돼? 라고 했습니다. 근데
At
저는
first, I just said,
처음에는
sure, without a second
알겠다고
thought.
그렇게 대답을 했습니다. 그리고
But then I
사모님이
read Mrs.
쓰신
Kim's book,
지금
Choose Now.
선택하라를 읽었는데 거기서 한
One testimony read that when
데뷔셨던
they
분이
decided to give up dancing,
자기가 춤을 추는 것을 다 그만두고
they ripped up
자기
all their
양복과
clothes and
구두를
threw away
가위로
their
찢어서
dancing shoes.
버렸다는 그런 이야기를 들었습니다. 그 이유는
The reason they did that was so that they could prevent someone else wearing those clothes and going dancing.
갈 수도 있기 때문에 그렇게 했다는 이야기를 듣고
So I realized that maybe I was
생각이
wrong.
들어서 친구한테 미안하다.
So I told my friend that I didn't want to give my account away and just wanted to delete it.
삭제하고 싶어서 너한테 못 줄 것 같다고 그렇게 얘기했습니다. 그리고
I got a call from
친구가
another
전화가
friend,
왔는데
and they
저한테
asked me if I would play a
게임할 수
game with them.
있냐고 그러는 거예요. 그래서 제가
I told them,
미안하다고
sorry,
나
I
이제 게임
can't.
끊어서
I
같이 할
quit
수 없을 것 같다.
playing games.
그랬더니 그러면
They responded by
우리가
asking me to
수능
teach
끝나고
them in a game after our
같이
college
나 좀
entrance
가르쳐
exam.
달라고 그랬는데 그
I think that
친구는
was
제가
because they thought I
공부
was just
때문에
quitting for a
2년
year.
동안만 게임을 끊는다 이렇게 생각을 했던 것 같아요. 그래서 저는
Although I debated for a moment,
그때
I was
살짝
able to tell the
고민했지만
friend that I quit games for good
앞으로 쭉 게임 안 하기로 결심해서
and that I
같이
wouldn't be
게임할
able
수
to
없을
play
것
with them
같다고
anymore.
그렇게 대답을 할 수가 있었습니다.
The thing I'm most grateful for is that through 세로남, my goals have started to focus on God.
하나님께 맞춰지기 시작한 것입니다. 그래서
Even if I stumble in the future, in order to follow God's will, I will not go to my phone to relieve stress.
스트레스를 풀기 위해서 핸드폰을 잡지 않고
And I'm grateful to have learned how to call upon God or read His Word instead.
선택지가 생긴 것이 저는 가장 감사합니다.
Even though there may be many times where I can accept Satan's thoughts, I will call upon God again, and I will try my hardest not to return to my past.
항상 열심히 노력하겠습니다.
Thank you.
감사합니다.
이 아가씨가
And she entered a nursing school. And last year, she came as a volunteer.
사단은 우리들의
Satan is appealing to our desires so that we will have pleasures from his temptation. But the temptation is bad, and only artificial love is developed, not frontal love. And Satan approaches us with the temptations.
Satan tempts them to seek it in lusts and pleasures that lead to ruin and death. He is offering them the apples of Sodom that will turn to ashes upon their lips.
어떤 사람이
So someone was looking at an apple, and an apple suddenly fell down.
왜 사과가
How come this apple, came down instead of going up? And he's discovered something, right? Who is this person?
뉴턴
Isaac Newton.
즉 땅에
So there's a power which draws something. We don't see it, but that there's someone who is drawing us.
이스라엘 백성들은
The Israelites were wandering in the desert and they were bitten by snakes.
그런데
But the remedy offered to them, look at the brazen serpent.
John chapter 3 verses 14 and 15. And as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have eternal life.
뱀은 성경에서
So
죄의
serpent means
누군가가
sin.
죄가 돼가지고
If somebody dies on the cross, because all our sins are offered,
그것이 우리의 모든
including our illness, including our transgressions.
그 죄 속에는
So in it, even game addiction is included. If I look, then I'll be restored. So our solution is very simple. We look and live.
You cannot change your heart. You cannot of yourself give to God its affections, but you can choose to serve him. You can give him your will. He will then work in you to will and to do according to his good pleasure.
Who is the president of United States of America? Do you know who that is? Trump?
트럼프,
What about before? The previous? Yes, Biden.
바이든. 근데 바이든은
I don't know, well about his, politics, but he was a great father.
근데 그 바이든
And he has a son.
근데 그 아들은
He was addicted with the drugs, addicted with the drinking alcohol. He had an affair with his sister-in-law.
그래서 그 아들 이름은
His name is Hunter Biden.
근데 그 헌터 바이든이
He wrote his own book.
그 자서전에서 자기
In his book, he wrote about his father.
이 마약
Drug addiction.
그가 마약 중독이 돼서 길거리에서
Many times he was just walking around in the street because he was addicted. He was seeking for a cup of drinking.
아들 때문에 대통령이 참
He had a lot of hard time because of his own son's affairs.
그가 그
But in his book, this is what he said.
읽어봅시다.
Hunter Biden, the second son of U.S. President Joe Biden, and often referred to as the Black Sheep, has revealed details of his tragic family history. According to reports by the New York Times and the Associated Press, Hunter is set to publish his memoir, Beautiful Things, April 2021. The book, about his thoughts on past struggles with drug and alcohol addiction, an affair with his brother's wife, and controversy surrounding his father's influence, also delves into the Biden family's personal history and Hunter's honest emotions, catching the attention of many.
근데 그가 이 자서전에서
In his book,
아버지에 대해서 너무 고맙게 생각하는 것은
he's so grateful to his father. When he was just walking around because he was drunk and his father visited him, he did not say anything.
한 번도 아버지가 나를
He
나무느냐
knew that not even once he got mad.
너는 아직 모든
But
걸
he said, "You have not lost all. You still have a hope."
그 아버지의
With the
말에
father's words, he was encouraged and he was freed from his addiction.
Hunter wrote in his memoir that his father's support was a great help in overcoming his drug addiction. He wrote, "My father embraced me as I wandered aimlessly on the street, drugged and lost, and we cried together in the dark for a long time. He kept reminding me that I hadn't lost everything. He never abandoned me, never turned away from me, and never judged me, no matter how bad the situation got."
아빠는 나를 버리지 않았다고.
My dad did not
세상의
forsake
모든
me.
사람은 나를
Maybe all the people around the world have forsaken me, but not my father. And he said, "You still have a hope." The relationship with his father helped him to quit his drinking and drugs. Not because he was judged, he was beaten. No, he received hope and strength. I can help you, you can do it. So Hunter Biden was able to quit this addiction because of his relationship with his father. What about our family? We might have some family members who are addicted.
이제 세상이
The world is about to end soon.
세상이 끝나가려고 하는 마지막 단계에
So there are some signs in the last days. Homosexuality.
그것은
Just like Sodom and Gomorrah.
때 있었던 것이. 즉 천사들이
Angels visited.
했는데 그들이
And then
나와서
these people in Sodom and Gomorrah said, please have sex with us.
그래서 소돔에서 있었던 일이라고
So because this was happening in Sodom,
섹스하는 것을
that's why,
소돔라이트라고 얘기해요.
sex with man, it is called Sodomites.
소돔은
But the Sodom was destroyed.
마지막 소돔에서
So what is the
있었던
last
일이 뭐냐?
thing happened in Sodom?
그것은
It was homosexuality.
그들은 그
They were
섹스
addicted
중독에
with
빠져
sex.
People who are attracted to the same sex are referred to as homosexuals in English. Among them, male homosexuals are called sodomites. This term originally referred to the people of Sodom. But why did this come to be? This is because the Bible shows evidence that the people of Sodom engaged in homosexual acts shortly before the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah.
그래서 지금은
So these days, so many people, they're homosexuals. This is the evidence of the last days.
Genesis chapter 19, verse 5. And they called to Lot and said to him, Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us, that we may know them carnally.
그 남장한 그들과
So they
상관하지만
are
섹스하겠다고
seeking men. That means they want to have sex with males.
그런데
It happened in the Old Testament. What about during the New Testament?
말세에 있었던 것이 남자와
Before the
여자와의 그런
last
섹스가
days,
아니고 남자끼리 여자끼리 섹스하는
man to man, woman to woman.
Romans chapter 1, verse 27. Likewise, also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust for one another, men with men committing what is shameful, and receiving in themselves the penalty of their error which was due.
그래서 거기에서 나온 산물이
So because of this, age comes out.
성에는
So homosexual are addiction, sexual addiction.
중독은 사람들과의 관계
But
속에서
this addiction can be cured with the human
해도 안 되는 거예요.
relationship, good relationship. This is a spiritual matter, and Satan is appealing people to be addicted sexually. More and more, society becomes rich and richer, but the people's lives are getting worse and worse.
그 소돔과
And Sodom and Gomorrah, the same thing happened.
Jude chapter 1, verse 7. In the same way, Sodom and Gomorrah and neighboring towns practiced immoral sexual relations and pursued other sexual urges. By undergoing the punishment of eternal fire, they serve as a warning.
비정상적인 유혹에
They
빠진 것이
fall
이게
into this very strange habit. This is one of the evidence happening in the last days. We need to help them.
중독에서
We need to help these people so that they will be free from these addictions. Drinking, sexual addiction, sex addiction, all these addictions. What is our part?
그런
We can help them so that they can have
인간끼리
relationship
중요하지만 하나님과의
with the others and with the God as well.
그것은 풍족하기 때문에
We are very rich and that we do have these addiction problems.
Ezekiel chapter 16 verses 49 and 50. Behold, this was the iniquity of thy sister Sodom. Pride, fullness of bread, and abundance of idleness was in her, and in her daughters. Neither did she strengthen the hand of the poor and needy. And they were haughty, and committed abomination before me. Therefore I took them away as I saw good.
소돔은
This is how Sodom was destroyed.
중독에서 빠져나온 술 중독에서 빠져나온
So I'm going to talk about a man who was free from drinking addiction. There are so many people who got healed. There are so many people, who are free from their addictions who came to Saronam.
중독학과
So you students from Samyuk, addiction science students, you came here.
그런 사람들
Is there
도와줄
anyone?
사람이 있다면
If there is anyone who is addicted, please let them come here.
이번에
And also you can apply what you have learned in this
이
place.
사람을 소개하겠습니다.
At a certain point, when I drank once, I'd end up drinking all night. I wouldn't even go home after. I'd stay out maybe 2 or 3 days. Last year in March, I thought, this won't do. My liver will die, and I'm setting a bad example for my kids. So I made a decision. A taxi was passing by, so I hopped on. With my own 2 feet, I admitted myself into a hospital specializing in treating alcoholism. I stayed there for about 2 months. It was a little different from a specialty clinic. I learned their methods and then left. I thought for sure I'd be able to quit this time, and I wouldn't be chased from my home. So I left feeling confident. But as soon as I left, the thought that I should drink a cup came into my mind. And once I returned home, I couldn't help but return to my old way of living. So at home, my wife's older brother said, this won't do at all. And so he recommended a nearby psychiatric hospital. So I went. I stayed there for 2 months, and really I didn't have many thoughts about drinking. So I left after 2 months. This time it worked, I thought. When I left my home once, I hadn't even reached my destination, but on the way there, I met with friends who I called to meet and drink with. Addiction is really the scary. Because I go to church, people mention Saronam. They recommended I go, so the morning that I went to Saronam, I was still a little drunk, tipsy. But once I arrived, I sobered up a little. I had counseling with the director, and for about 2 weeks, I listened to the lectures about being reborn on the cross. And I actually listened to these parts. As I listened, you know how we are supposed to choose between 2 thoughts? Satan's thoughts and God's thoughts come into the mind, and I need to choose between them. When I heard that, it felt like I had discovered a new light. As I felt that, I began to reflect upon my past life. Because I didn't grasp the hand that was offered to me at the cross, I had no choice to be separated. I was born into this world, but why do I need to live in this pitiful way? But right now, I'm very happy.
조금 줄였는데. 우리가 선택할 수
So we do have a choice.
그런데 이제까지는
But so far, like thoughts from outside, like it happened to Eve. The feelings went into Eve, and she ended up eating of it. We think of drinking, we want to drink it, but at the time, by calling upon God, if the power from God comes into us, we can quit it. So this relationship matters with. I really pray that to be victorious in Christ. Our Father in heaven,
우리가 주님을
As we meet you,
우리가 가지고 있던 여러 가지 문제점들을
we want to solve many problems as we meet you. So please, oh Lord, meet us.
오늘은 특별히
Especially today,
중독과 학생들이 다른 많은 사람들에게
students from addiction science have come to this place because they want to help so many people.
분들에게도
Please, oh Lord, help them so that they will gain wisdom from you. Help them to meet you as well. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.